Hello. All right, I think that works. Cool. Perfect. Where can I see who's... It will say like a certain amount of people watching or something like that, so I can see where people are at.
It's not saying.
That's fine. I'll just ask them to say in the comments.
I don't think anybody's here.
Okay.
Nobody's here, that's why.
Okay. I'll check on my students. It says my students are saying they can't get on it. They're saying they can't get on the live stream. Is it posted? My seniors had a hard time with it too, and it didn't upload the video, by the way.
It's public.
If you go to my account, can you click on it?
Yeah, you're go to YouTube. You're live. I don't know. Are they clicking an old link or something?
I gave them the link to my my account, to the channel.
Yeah, they should just be able to click on Megan Ryan live stream right there. It's public. It's if you want to link them.
It says it'll just go to your channel, but the video won't show up.
Have they tried refreshing? It's public. Let me try.
I have other students texting me too.
Okay.
No, they had a hard time getting in also. Yeah, but they had a hard time with it.
I can see you fine. I don't know what.
I gave them a link. Love, maybe you can get me a new link.
It's okay. It's fine though. I mean, you're on the front page of your website. I'm signed in on my account over here.
Okay, Hannah found it.
I'll give you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask then. Okay, now, yeah, one student found it at least. I don't know why it's doing that.
All right, here's the link to your channel. I don't know why.
Did you email it to me, love?
Yeah. And then I'll email you also the link to the specific video.
Okay. Yeah, I think Hannah's the only one that was able to get on so far. All right, so some reason... Oh, Maria got on. Hello, Maria. If you guys have some... This happened with... I don't know what's going on with the seniors. With this video, it happened to the seniors too. If you guys have some type of chat group thread for this class, if you guys can just send it out. I don't know why some people are having a hard time actually getting on the link or clicking on the link and getting to the video, but I have multiple texts from students trying to do that. So if one of you girls would be able to do that, that'd be great.
I just emailed you the link.
Okay.
To your channel.
Thomas, can you come? Because it's still live streaming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, can you come and put the video back? This one right here?
That's to your channel, and the other one, that's to the specific video.
Okay.
So, on your channel, it should show up on the front page. I just tried on multiple accounts, so I don't know what to say.
Okay, it looks like I just have one. That's not even a student that had texted me. Okay. Where can I see the little... can you put it back to the other thing where it says who's watching or how many people are watching?
2.
All right. Okay. I don't know what's going on. But okay, I'll figure it out and I'll wait for them. Thank you. Okay, I don't know what is going on. Okay, now we got 3. Yay. there's a few that are trying to get on there. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this. This is the first time that happened, but now we got 4, so it looks like some people are still able to do that. I'm going to explain in this video the easiest way for you guys to take notes with what we're about to do is to click on the Google link that I put in the update section so that you're not having to write down or quickly type these questions that you guys had so fast. So I'm going to explain this here, and then I'm going to explain it again in the assignment section. So what you're going to do is take the Google document that whole bunch of people all of a sudden at once. Yay, great. Okay, so you're going to copy and paste. So click on the link that I gave you in the Schoology update section. It's a Google Drive or Google Doc link. Click on that. That has all the questions that we'll be going over today. Some will take 30 seconds to answer. Some will take a minute or 2. You will copy and paste that at the bottom of your assignment that you already submitted to Schoology. I have already graded all of those, so good job all of you who got them in on time. You will then answer those questions as we go along so that you're not having to type like crazy. You already have the questions there. So if you understand what I just said about how to take notes during this live stream today, can you please just say, I understand or okay in the chat section so I know that you girls know what we are doing and there's no confusion and we can keep going. So I see the students who are here, Maria, Eva, Caroline, Hannah, Lizzie. That is who I see right now. So you can just say, okay, or I understand, or got it, or something in the chat so we can move forward. Perfect. Got a few of you. Okay, great. Awesome. Great. So with that, we are going to get started. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to read through. There it is. Yes. Is it that one? Where are we at? There we go. I'm going to read through chapter 2 with you guys. So you should also have your Bibles out, even if it's just open to a tab on your screen through Bible Gateway. That also works. So that's what we're going to start with in Ruth chapter 2. Okay. Now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a man of great wealth of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So she departed, Ruth departed, and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was the family of Elimelech. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, may the Lord be with you. And they said to him, may the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? The servant in charge of the reapers replied, she is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab. And she said, she being Ruth, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. Thus she came and has remained from the morning until now, and she has been sitting in the house for a little while. Then Boaz said to Ruth, listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but stay here with my maids. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. Indeed, I have commanded the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink from what the servants draw. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? Boaz replied to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and came to a people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work, and your wages be full from the Lord, and the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and indeed have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here that you may eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers, and he served her roasted grain, and she ate and was satisfied, and had some left. When she rose to glean, Boaz commanded his servant, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not insult her. Also you shall purposely pull out for her some grain from the bundles, and leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her. So she gleaned in the field until evening. And then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. She took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also took it out and gave Naomi what she had left after she was satisfied when she was eating earlier. Her mother-in-law then said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead." Again Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives." Then Ruth the Moabitess said, "Furthermore, he said to me, 'You should stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maids, so that others do not fall upon you in another field." So she stayed close by the maids of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Okay, so there's a lot of times I wanted to stop, but I was trying not to get ahead of myself because you guys asked really, really great questions about this chapter. So some of them, again, are super simple, be answered very quickly with like a word or two. So that's what you'll be doing as we go along, and some of them are a little more thorough. If you have questions, please ask them in the chat section. It's right here. I can see it right in front of my face, so I will not miss it, even if I wait for a second. Well, if I'm in the middle of answering a question. So the first question that you girls asked was just from verse 1. It says that Naomi had a kinsman of her family who was from the clan or family of Elimelech. The question is, what type of clan were Boaz and Elimelech from? So clan in this time just means family, like family clan, first of all. But they were specifically, and I'm going to do this thing here that my husband set me up with. Hopefully it works and I don't knock anything over. But they were from the clan of Judah. So there are 12 tribes of Israel. Specifically, they are from the tribe of Judah. The city of Bethlehem is in the tribe of Judah. Like we know from chapter 1, they were from Judah. They were from Bethlehem. They went to Moab, and they came back to Judah, to Bethlehem. So they are from that tribe, which is that clan. Elimelech and Boaz as well. So they're from the same family, the same clan, and from the same line of Judah. They also, as we said, are from Bethlehem. So those two places... Wow, I can spell. Those two places should ring a bell to you about maybe some other famous biblical character who also is associated with Bethlehem and Judah. Does anyone want to put in the chat section who that character might be? For fun. Extra points or something. There's someone else that you guys have heard about who also has Judah and Bethlehem in their history of where they're from. Yes, Jesus. Good job, Maria. Yeah, Jesus also was born in Bethlehem. And good job, you guys. All right at once. Yeah, so Jesus. Yeah, and that will come up later in the story. Fun fact. So that is number 1. Or they're not numbers. Sorry, I didn't number them. They just go by verses. If you want to number them for yourself for fun, then you can. But that was verse 1. That was the question from verse 1. A question from verse 2. We had a few questions on verse 2. The first one is, what does it mean when Ruth said, "In whose sight I shall gain favor"? So Ruth is just going out to try to find food that is left over in the fields of the men who are doing the harvesting. We will talk about that and gleaning in a bit. But essentially she's saying, well, I'm going to go try to find this food, and hopefully someone is nice to me, and hopefully someone takes pity on me, and hopefully, things go well. That's really what she's saying in whose sight I shall gain favor. So she's just kind of saying, all right, see you later, and I hope that things go well for us. So that is verse 2. That question for verse 2. The second question for verse 2 is, how is it possible to be working on the same farm as the man that they were just talking about, Boaz? So I'm glad someone asked this. I actually mentioned it with the seniors, even though no one did. I want to make sure that we understand how this story is being told. There is a narrator, which is a character who's not in the story, but just telling the story. So like if you guys have heard fairy tales, or even like I think Disney movies have done this too, where they say, once upon a time in a land far away, there lived a princess in a castle. The person who's saying those words is not usually part of the story. It's some third party who's just the observer, the narrator of the story. So for the writer of the text to mention Boaz doesn't mean that those people are talking about Boaz. It doesn't mean Ruth and Naomi are talking about Boaz when it says, now Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, blah, blah, blah. They weren't talking about him just then. The narrator was just introducing this chapter with explaining who Boaz is. Just saying, hey, by the way, there's a guy named Boaz, and he's related to Naomi because of birth, or because of marriage, not birth. And they're just introducing the chapter. What number are we on? There are no numbers. We are on verse 2, the second question of verse 2. So that's what that is. They were not talking about him. Ruth stumbled upon Boaz's field. She did not know. There was a bunch of fields. She went to it seems like a very big one, and that she happened to come upon the portion of that field that Boaz owned. She did not go to Boaz on purpose specifically. So, like, I'm sure Naomi knew, that Boaz was around, but that's not something that they were, like, talking about or scheming to do. She just so happened. I think the text literally says she happened to go to the part. Yeah, verse 3. She happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz. So, hopefully that answers that question. Okay. Let's see. Dear husband over in the other side of the room, our Instacart order is going to be here, so you have to go get it. This is quarantine life. All right. Verse 2 also, this is the last part of verse 2. Yep, there we go. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, so verse 2, and Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the fields, get leftover grain. So this person was quoting it. The question is, why do they suddenly refer to Ruth as Ruth the Moabite? The author of this book is just reminding us that Ruth is not Jewish. She is a Moabite. She's from Moab. Sometimes they refer to her as Ruth, the daughter-in-law of Naomi, or Ruth, or they do refer to her as other things other than just the Moabite. But this is just verse 2. So remember, we're in a new chapter. So as they introduce Ruth again, they're just reminding the reader she's Moabite. That's really all that they're doing. Like you would, again, if you're telling some type of story or fairy tale, you might remind the person where they're from or who their father is or things like that. So that they're just reminding the reader she's not from Judah. She is not Hebrew by birth. She's a foreigner, in the land with the Israelites with her mother-in-law. So that's that part. The next question, I'll take a pause for a second if you guys need. Do we only need to write down? No, you need to write down the answers to the questions.
I need your ID.
Okay, it is in my purse. Cool, thanks. In the bedroom. Okay. Trying to do life and do school at the same time is super fun. So I just wrote those notes so that you guys can have the ways of having to spell them and just so that they're visuals. I will type out certain things, but as I'm explaining, just like in class, that doesn't mean that you only write down what I write down. We're going through each of the questions. You do not need to use complete sentences by any means. You only need to answer the question. That's specifically why, and I didn't do this for the seniors, but I did do it for you guys. I gave you the Google Doc of all the questions we were going over today. So all you had to do was jot down the quick answer, and that was all.
Not my
Okay.
They won't give us our groceries if you don't give.
You have to have yours. Okay. Do you want to say hi to my students for a second?
Nope.
Okay. I will be right back, guys. Give me 30 seconds. It's less than 30 seconds. Okay. So hopefully that answers that. Any other questions on the chapter or the verse 2 questions? Or about what you're supposed to be doing right now? Okay, cool. I see 8 of you. That is great. All right. This next question is one of the more important questions, and a lot of you guys asked about this, but just for a different verse. This one put it with verses 2 through 3. So the question that you have on your notes is, was it common for poor people to go into the fields and gather what is left from the workers? Was it considered a crime? So, was it common for poor people to go into the fields and gather what's left? Yes. Not only was it common, but it was allowed. It was actually a law. So it was the opposite of a crime. It was actually something that was written into Jewish law to take care of the poor. We have heard that God cares about the poor. We have heard that God cares about his people. But this was an actual law for his people who were maybe more wealthy or more well off, so that the people who didn't have means to provide for themselves could. So there's a question. Can we go back to the second one? I don't know what you mean by second one because we're still in verses 2 through 3. There was one question for verse 1. There were 3 questions specifically for verse 2. Those were all very quick questions. And then now we're on the one that says verses 2 through 3. Again, your questions are not numbered, but they just go through the verses. So now we are on, I'm just reading out the question that you guys asked. So hopefully all of you looked at the updates and what I said at the beginning of the video. that you are going to be just going through the questions that I give you in the Google Docs. So you don't have to write down any of the questions. I am going to type something here to help you guys. So if you need time to catch up, you can. I'm going to put this right here for a second. So this word glean, which we'll get to in a second, that Levitical should be capitalized. Whoops. It was actually a law, like I just said. It was not a crime. They were allowed to do this. So in verses 2 through 3, that's the first time we are introduced to this process. So in Leviticus 23, 22, I will read out the verse. You do not have to write it all down, but if you want to look it up and copy and paste on Google, that's totally fine. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner residing among you. I am the Lord your God. So that is a command from God, directly from God, through Moses to his people. This has been a command for a while. Ruth is both poor and a foreigner. She's both of those things. So this directly relates to her. Naomi, of course, was going to tell her, hey, this is a law, so that you are able to go into the fields, and you should be able to get some things for us to have food and not die of starvation. I see you guys asking what question this is. Again, the questions aren't numbered, so I can't tell you what number they are. We are just on verses 2 through 3. So it is on your Google Docs. It is the question about poor people going into the fields to gather what is left of the workers. If you guys want to number them and then follow along, you guys can totally do that. Okay, so that is the last question that has anything to do with verse 2. We will revisit the concept of gleaning in a second when it comes up again. So now, I will take a pause. We are going to the question where it is verse 4. So on your notes, it says verse 4. What does reapers mean? And then there's some more questions too. So before we move on, is everyone there? We are in verse 4. What does reapers mean? That was the question. The person asks, what does reapers mean? Is it the farmers? Another person asked about the same thing. Boaz has that many harvesters. Does that mean that they're all his servants? Does that mean he holds higher power and wealth? So reapers in this sense does not mean like the Grim Reaper, like someone who's coming to kill you. Reaper as in they are reaping the harvest. They are taking the things, the grain from the harvest in order to make bread and other things for food. So reapers, workers, they're the same. Servants, yes. But servants in the sense that they're paid. They're paid workers of his. Yeah, he seems to have a lot. Some of them, though, might be workers who come and pay him a certain amount and come and actually glean from his field to take back to their families or their, businesses or whatever, their homes. They pay Boaz's portion of the field. Hey, can we come and take and get food for ourselves? They're paying to get the grain. Some of them are his own workers. So then they actually do it for him, and then they harvest all the grain, and then they are able to make bread, and then they will sell that in the markets or things like that. So some of them are his workers. Some of them are other people. And the question, does that mean he holds higher power and wealth? Yes, he does, because the fact that he owns a large portion of a big field alone means that yes, he has some wealth. And in the beginning of chapter 2, he actually is called like a man of valor or a man of wealth and things like that. So yes, all of those things, reapers, farmers, sure, kind of the same thing. And yeah, he does hold higher power and wealth. That is true. So that's verse 4. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. We are moving from verse 4 to verse 8. But I want to take note between those two, because in between verse 4 and verse 8, Boaz asks, whose daughter is this, or whose woman is this, or whatever. He asks basically, who is this lady who I haven't seen before, who is now in my fields? They say, this is Ruth. This is Ruth the Moabitess, who came from Moab, who is living with her mother-in-law, who did all of these amazing things. They've heard of Ruth. Ruth has a reputation, and it's actually a good one. They know about this woman who came to live with the Israelites and worship the Israeli God, even though she is not, Jewish by birth. And she is known to be someone who, wow, This person came with, bitter old Naomi, who, to be fair, lost her husband and her kids. And this woman cares more about Naomi than she did about, logically going back to her family and starting a family. So they know about Ruth. Boaz has heard about Ruth. He knows how kind she has been to Naomi, which, if we are following along, Naomi is related to Boaz by marriage because they're from the same clan, and Elimelech and Boaz were related, and Naomi was married to Elimelech. So that's going to be in Boaz's mind as he's meeting this woman. So now we're on to verse 8. Boaz has a conversation with Ruth. He calls her, the first, sentence he says is, "Listen carefully, my daughter." The question is, why does Boaz call Ruth his daughter? It is just a term of endearment. That's pretty much it. It does not mean literal daughter. She's a young woman. We know that she's younger than Boaz, and so Boaz is saying my daughter. It's like kind of a term of respect, but also kind of a sweet term. If I call my husband boy, I'm not literally calling him like a 12-year-old child. I'm just saying, something cute. It's kind of like that. So it's also implied, like we'll learn more later, that she is much younger than him. And it's language that implies taking care of her too. When you say my daughter and about what, and in light of what he's about to say, it also implies, yes, hey, I'm going to take care of you like you were a daughter, like you were a relative, or like you were under my care. So that's the beginning of verse 8. The next question goes back to kind of what I just said. This is the one on your worksheet that says verses 8 through 9. I will type it here so you guys don't get confused. Verses 8 through 9. And it also says 14 through 16. So that's the next one that we're addressing so that no one's confused about which number we are on. That is the one that we are on. It is mentioned in verses 8 and 9, also verses 14 through 16. And the question is this: why did Boaz treat Ruth so well even though he didn't know her? That's why I went back with you girls. We had to take a look at that. He knew who she was. That's why he treated her so well. Her reputation preceded her. She was known to be this kind woman who was risking her life to care for Naomi, which is not heard of. Someone who became Jewish and left behind the pagan gods that her people worshipped in Moab. And so, his workers tell her tell him who she is. He had already heard. If we remember back from chapter 1, I don't know if I said this to you guys, maybe it was the seniors, but it says that the whole town was stirred because of her, because of them, because Naomi came back. Stirred, you're like, oh, what's going on? It's like gossip, but good gossip, that she's come back and here's this woman Naomi, or this woman Ruth, who is with Naomi. So he knew what she had gone through. He knew that she had lost her husband and all these people, and he immediately wants to show her kindness, like she had shown Naomi. So that is why he was so nice to her, even though he didn't know her. He knew her of reputation. Like, he wanted to pay it forward. So there's that, the way that she had done with Naomi. So that is verses 8 and 9. Any questions on that one? Okay. We're like a little over halfway done. Cool. Yeah, it's not even 2:30. Okay. So verse 9 is a pretty quick one. You ask, why did Ruth choose to start working in the field when it was a man's job? It wasn't actually a man's job. It says there were maidservants there too. So there are men and women in the field. Maybe the more intense harvesters would be mostly men, but there were maidservants there too. And it doesn't matter what gender you are. If you're poor and you got to get food, you're going to go in one of the fields and glean the food. And in a second, we'll talk about what gleaning is as well. So yeah, it's not necessarily a man's job. It's just whoever needs to get food. Remember, she's not a paid servant. She's just there getting the leftovers of whatever the harvesters are dropping, because that is Jewish law, like we just talked about. So verse 10, Ruth is surprised that Boaz notices her because she is a foreigner. Why would Boaz not take notice of her based on her being from Moab? Okay, so that's actually a good question. Especially given the fact that the Israelites are, like we just read in Leviticus, are told to be kind to the foreigner. Maybe Ruth knows that, maybe she doesn't. But there's two main reasons for this. One, the Jewish community is primarily supposed to take care of its own as far as the family goes, and she's not, one of their own technically or, ethnically speaking. She was just asking, why are you treating me like I'm Jewish, even though I'm not? And then, or not Jewish by heritage. We know she worships the God of Israel because she's made that very clear. And the second point being, she's still new to living in Judah. Like, not a lot of time has passed. I mean, they get there, they got to find food pretty much immediately. So maybe a few days, maybe a week, we don't know. But yeah, not a lot of time has passed. So she's essentially asking, why are you treating me as one of your own, even though I have barely been living in this community for such a short amount of time? You know, you didn't have to be exceptionally kind to me. They're supposed to let the foreigners glean, but he's clearly going above and beyond that. So she's asking, it's a normal question, you know, why are you being so nice to me? She might in the back of her mind know, but she's still asking, and it's a valid question to ask. Why are you being so nice to me, basically? So that's verse 10. We'll take a quick pause, because I know I talk fast. But some of these questions are, again, very, very short, have very, very short answers. But I want to make sure that you guys are there. So I see there's like a good chunk of you who are watching. 9 out of 10, I'm assuming. So that's really good. Good job, you guys. Just checking in. If you want to type and say I'm alive, that's great. Just want to make sure you guys are following. The other thing, too, is that this video is going to be uploaded. And then you have, I forget how long I said you have until midnight or until tomorrow or something to watch it. If you need to watch it again, then you can totally do that. Okay. Yeah, the next few questions are actually really short too. Okay, we'll keep going. So verse 11, was Boaz told all of what Ruth has done? Well, if we look at verse 11, in chapter 2, am I in the right place? Oh, no, I'm not. He literally says, Boaz replied to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me. So yes, he knows. He knows what Ruth has done. It states it explicitly there. That's part of why he's so nice to her and part of why he's paying it forward, because he's trying to show her kindness in the way that she showed Naomi kindness. I will repeat that, because if you haven't written essentially that down, you will want to. Boaz is wanting to show Ruth kindness because of the kindness that Ruth has shown Naomi. That is a big deal. He is trying to live as a man of God. He is trying to honor the Levitical command, and also, you know, like when God gives us a command to be nice to someone, we could do the bare minimum, or we could go above and beyond and really bless someone. And that is what Boaz is trying to do. Like, full stop. He is trying to provide for Ruth, because Ruth came here based on her faith in God. So just like we would want to people to, if we're Christians, we want to see people feel the love of Jesus through our love for them. Like, that's our hope, because we know that God is love and we know Jesus has changed our lives. He wants Ruth to feel God's love for her. So he is doing that. And we see that in the way that he talks about God and the way he talks to her too in this chapter. We're not reading into the text. He makes it very clear. Okay, so that is verse 11. Verse 13. So is Ruth a servant? No, she is not. She is not a paid servant. She is a random poor girl that has no food and no money, and so she's gleaning in the field. She is not one of Boaz's servants. He's just treating her with as much dignity and respect, if not more, than his paid servants. And that's why there's that interaction of, why are you being so nice to me? And why Naomi gets so excited at the end. So, no, she's not his servant. She's just being treated like one in a good way. Verse 15. So he says, so Boaz says to his workers, let Ruth hang out with the girls who are gleaning. Let her, get food as much as she wants. Even if she gets, picks from some of the sheaves, they're supposed to glean what kind of falls on the ground. They're not supposed to pick from the actual, I don't know these technical words for grain and wheat and stuff. But they're not supposed to get from the actual stalks, I guess is what they're called. The sheaves. He's saying if she does that, unknowingly, don't reprimand her. Don't get mad at her. Don't tell her to leave or yell at her or whatever. Just let her do her thing. That's what Boaz is saying to his harvesters. Just leave her alone. Don't embarrass her. Some versions say embarrass her. Don't ask her a million questions or make her feel bad if she does something wrong. Just let her be. Don't mess with her. So that's verse 15. Okay. We only have a few left. Any questions so far? I will pause for 30 seconds and drink my coffee. And again, if you guys have follow-up questions, or if I go too fast, or if something doesn't make sense, please ask. Oof. Okay. Verses 17 and 19 focus on gleaning. 5 of you asked this question. What does glean mean? I think that I've explained that already, but I will briefly give you a Wikipedia definition. And actually, can I do this here? Okay. If you are able, literally type that into Google and Wikipedia definition will come up that I'm about to read. Copy and paste into your notes. Just copy and paste. Normally I say don't do that. Go ahead and do that if you want to. So I will read it to you. Straight from Wikipedia. Gleaning is the act of collecting leftover crops from farmers' fields after they have been commercially harvested or on fields where it is not economically profitable to harvest. So like, again, the leftovers are the ones that don't look as good. It is a practice described in the Hebrew Bible that became a legally enforced entitlement of the poor in a number of Christian kingdoms. So they're saying Christian kingdoms as in like Jewish, but also Christian, like it continued. Like we've heard as Jesus, who was Jewish, but obviously started the Christian faith, would talk about caring for the poor. Extract information for... I don't know what that means. But yeah, so this is the gleaning. I typed it into Google. That was the definition that came up. There might be a weird definition, like a short like dictionary definition. We're not talking about that one. We're talking about the definition that it might pop up on your screen. You don't have to click on anything. I think it just pops up, or maybe you click one of the drop downs that says, what is gleaning. But this is gleaning as far as gleaning a field, not gleaning information from someone. Those are different uses of that word. We're talking about gleaning as far as a field. So that's what that is. What is gleaning? It is a Levitical law, like we talked about. It's in the little text box there, that God said, you have to do this because I care about the poor. I care about people. You who are wealthy, you who have been blessed, it is not just for you and for your own stuff. You are supposed to take care of those who are vulnerable, who are weak, who cannot take care of themselves. And that definitely describes Ruth and Naomi right now. So Boaz is fully aware of this law. We see that he is a man of God. I don't know if you guys or someone else from the senior class that asked about this exchange between him and his servants, like the Lord bless you and the Lord be with you. But that's showing his faith. He is a practicing Jew. He does take the law seriously, and he wants to honor God in the way he lives. So he is letting Ruth and the other people glean. Okay. That is verse 17 and 19 and like a bunch of other times where it mentions glean. Any other questions on gleaning? Because that is an important part of this chapter. Okay. Verse 19, did Ruth work for Boaz? Nope. We talked about that already. No, she did not. He was just giving her food and letting her stay there and get extra. Okay. We have literally 3 more left, but verse 20 is like jam-packed with stuff. So here you're going to want to pay attention, and I will slow down if I need to. So I'm going to read out what is on your Google Doc, the questions you guys asked. I think there were 3 or 4 of you that asked questions on this. So I'm going to go ahead and read those. Verse 20. This is quoting the chapter. The Lord bless him, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. She added, that man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers. So your question is Boaz related to Ruth because she said our relative? And Naomi is her mother-in-law. And Ruth's husband also died. So kind of a convoluted question. But is Boaz related to Ruth? Not related to Ruth, technically speaking. And not even technically related to Naomi blood-wise. But yes, they are relatives in the sense that Boaz is directly related to Elimelech. So I will write that in the text box. So Boaz is related. Oops. They are relatives. They are blood relatives. Okay? Which means that Naomi is by marriage a direct relative of Boaz in that way, which means by marriage Ruth has ties to Boaz as well. And that will come up in a second when we talk about what this term redeemer or guardian redeemer or kinsman redeemer means. So the other person asked, oh yeah, Naomi says he continued showing his kindness to the living as well as the dead. Is she talking about Jesus or Boaz? I don't know why he'd be talking about Jesus, but she is talking about Boaz. In the way she's mentioning, how do you show kindness to the dead? Ooh, yes, that's a good question. Okay, so Boaz, Naomi says of Boaz is continuing to show kindness to the living and the dead. Well, who's living? that Boaz is showing kindness to? Ruth and Naomi. So he's showing kindness to them. Who is the dead that he is showing kindness to? Elimelech, because that's his relative. So he's showing kindness in that way as well. That he is, like you would want to say family takes care of each other in a perfect world. And in God's kingdom, that is what we're supposed to do. Family takes care of one another. And so Boaz is continuing to take care of Elimelech as his relative through taking care of Naomi and Ruth. And that is what she means by that. So any questions on that? Because that's an important point. The last part of that question is, how did he show kindness to the dead? It was essentially the same question that someone else asked. I always think it's cool when you guys essentially ask the exact same questions. Okay. All right. Verse 22. Naomi told Ruth she may be harmed in someone else's field, but why would religious people harm a helpless woman? Does that mean women were in an extremely vulnerable state? Yes. Yeah, it does. If you guys remember from one of the first videos, this was at the time of the judges. There was no king yet. And part of why they had judges is because the Jewish people who were supposed to be following God's laws weren't doing that. Boaz was. But yeah, in some other fields, money-hungry, power-hungry, like sketchy men, yeah, they would literally take advantage of the young women who were gleaning in the fields, or the young workers would, and maybe the owners of the field would turn a blind eye. There were bad stuff happening. Boaz knew that would not go down in his field. So he's saying, hey, don't go to the other places. Like, stay here. You will be safe here. Because not everyone was following God. And there's other times of that too. I mean, Habakkuk, we went through Habakkuk. Habakkuk was complaining about the same thing. So this was during the time of the judges when not everyone was taking care of things. That's what why God was pissed, because his people were supposed to be caring for one another, and sometimes they were taking advantage of each other. But luckily, that was not the case for Boaz. He was a good guy. So last question, and then we have to talk about a term that I will write on the notes over here that you guys need to have, but you guys didn't really ask about it. One of you kind of asked about it, but I didn't put it into a specific question, so I'll put it in the notes. The last one, why did Ruth stay at this location rather than moving onto a more complex job? Not really sure what more complex job means, but there wasn't one. It's not like 2020 where you can say, I don't want to be in the field worker anymore. I'm going to go be a lawyer. Like, that was not a thing. That was not possible. She couldn't just decide to do a job. Women weren't hired to do jobs, and it's not like there were a whole bunch of jobs to choose from. So that was not a possibility of hers. She's staying at that location because she was getting food, she was getting kindness, she was being protected and safe. Someone who was clearly a man of God, she could trust. Like, a million good reasons for her to stay doing what she was already doing. So that was verse 23. Okay, for the end of this class, you are going to... I don't think I've written that down yet. No, I have not. Okay, so kinsman redeemer. Other ones might say guardian redeemer. This concept comes up a lot throughout this chapter. There's a couple of different ways that they bring it up, but she being Naomi does mention in verse 20... I think it is verse 20, maybe another time too, that she says, this man is our relative, he is one of our closest relatives. I think in some of your versions, it might say, this man is a kinsman redeemer, or this man is a guardian redeemer. That concept of, and I'm going to make sure that I give you guys this wording correctly. Okay. This concept is another law in the Old Testament, and this will come up. You will need to know this. The concept of gleaning and the concept of kinsman redeemer are very, very important for the whole book and for the entire chapter when you guys have your test and when you have your final, whatever that will look like in the future. This is an important part, and it'll come up a bunch. So, but we want to introduce it now and understand it now. So this is a law in the Old Testament. To redeem something, we've talked about this before, and I'm writing this out so that you guys have it for sure and it doesn't get lost in my talking too fast. This means to buy back or set free by paying a price. Okay. Whoop. I'm good at typing over my Bible. Okay. There we go. Okay, to buy back or set free by paying a price. So if your car gets towed and it is in it's impounded, I think is the correct term, you have to go redeem it. You have to go pay to get it back and set it free from its car prison. So that is kind of the same concept. If someone is, in debt, or if someone, and then they get their house taken, someone would need to go pay off the debt to redeem the house. Or if someone, in this case, someone's family has died and they are, imprisoned by their poverty, imprisoned by their land being taken by the government because they abandoned it, which happened in this case, and the person who owned the land, being Elimelech, died. They can't do anything about it. They have no means of buying it back. They don't have money themselves. So, and there's no way for them to really get money because they can't just go to work. It would take decades, forever, to try to get this land back. So, in Jewish law, to protect, again, women and children and vulnerable, they would have this concept of kinsmen redeemers, so that if a husband died or there was financial difficulty, that there would be a relative that then would be the next person in line to provide for the family. They would have to, put up some of their own money to buy the field or to take care of the family. But then, of course, then they get land, and then they get, kids to help around the house or whatever, the house. So there was some payment, but there was also some blessing. But there might be more, there might be more inconveniences as well. But that was part of God's law, saying we're not going to let anyone go unprovided for. We're not going to let anyone die of starvation or die of not being cared for. So that is this concept. Naomi is saying Boaz is one of these guys. That means we might have some hope. The seniors in the last class asked, is verse 20 a turning point in the story? Yes, it is a huge turning point. Naomi finally is excited because she sees that they might not be screwed. They might actually have hope that someone will provide for them, and they might not just be living in poverty for the rest of their lives. Now, we don't know this for sure, that Boaz is able to do this quite yet, but she says he is one of them. He is a close relative. And so she's saying, keep going back to Boaz, keep hanging out with his maidservants, keep finding favor in his eyes. This could be a really cool thing for us. This could be what we were hoping for. So that is what the concept of kinsman redeemer. It will come up again in the next chapter. That's all I have for you guys. It is 2:47, so hopefully that makes sense. If you have any last minute questions, go ahead and ask them now. Otherwise, you can email me. You need to watch this video and upload it by midnight tonight. If I said otherwise in the thing, then I will change what I just said, but I think I did say midnight tonight. So that is all for you guys. Thank you for paying attention, and hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. Okay.